Hello everyone, my name is Jack Hamilton, and my partner and I, Antonio, are going to be here talking about why racial diversity as an application requirement for college campuses should be abolished across the United States. One of the main processes through this, or one of the main processes that colleges employ to do this is a process called affirmative action. Affirmative action is an action or policy that favors certain racial groups that tend to suffer from discrimination, especially in regards to employment and education. In essence, it's an attempt at positive discrimination. Affirmative action was first implemented in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it was meant to be a noble effort to jumpstart racial integration and foster equal opportunity across the United States. However, since then, it's lost its way. To prove our point, we'll be discussing the facts that there are other ways of diversifying campuses that, besides affirmative action, the fact that it hurts the racial and ethnic groups that it tends to help, and the fact that student performance is negatively impacted with racial identity when racial identity is considered. So our first point discusses the fact that there are alternative methods to diversifying campuses. A fear that many people have when it comes to affirmative action is that the number of minority students across the board will drop. However, research done by the Brookings Institution found that select universities have a slight drop in minority students. However, across the statewide analysis, there is no drop at all. The Brookings Institution also found that in selective universities in California, students were given preferential treatment if they were both low-income students and they were the first in their family to go to college. These methods give a side effect of boosting diversity, since racial minorities are disproportionately more likely to come from disadvantaged backgrounds. So even though they're not considering the race as the main reason of application, having a difficult background is often incorporated with race. So you're still getting diversity without using affirmative action. Another piece of evidence they discovered is that when colleges open up their admissions to socioeconomically disadvantaged students, they increase diversity in other important ways, which give certain students that are overlooked by affirmative action another shot. Our second point to the fact is that although it is intended to help certain ethnic groups, it actually hurts them more than it does helping them. When digging deeper into the backgrounds of these students, people found that the reason for this way of doing things stems back to primary school. If you are disadvantaged in primary school, it often carries along and kind of impacts you throughout your entire education period, and even through college. This leads to a number of issues in college, because once they're admitted into high prestige universities across the United States, they're often it is found that more than 50% of African American law students that were admitted to these higher education colleges that were from stable or diverse backgrounds, racially diverse, disadvantaged backgrounds, more than 50% of them were on the bottom 10% of their class when they were admitted. That means they're falling behind across the board. They're having a more difficult time keeping up with these high intensity programs, and the dropout rate because of this. The dropout rate of African American students was 19.3% compared to their Caucasian counterparts in the schools, which was 9.3%. Our third point describes how when states have repealed affirmative action, the overall student success rates have either maintained or increased across the board. Currently in the United States, there are 8 states that have repealed affirmative action in all college campuses and inside their borders, including California, Washington, Nebraska, Michigan, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Florida. Together, these states educate about 29% of all students in the United States. In each of these states, the programs that have implemented, all implemented programs to increase the diversity in their campuses while offsetting affirmative action. This means that instead of affirmative action, they have programs that do not use racial diversity as an aspect, but they still achieve racial diversity in their campuses through alternative methods. Programs such as this, one of these programs is called percent plans, where states such as California, Texas, and Florida use a percent, which is 10% of all high school students, to admit into their colleges. So if you're in the top 10% of your high school, you are guaranteed admission to a certain university in your state. It does not specific to a certain university, but it's a university will admit you, guaranteed, in that state. So this does not matter of where you come from, doesn't matter how good your school is, doesn't matter how bad your school is, if you have the right resources or not. If you're in the top 10% of your class, you will be admitted to a college. Another method that offsets affirmative action is the addition of new financial aid programs. By offering more aid to lower income students in disadvantaged neighborhoods, they encourage more students to apply, which boosts the admissions rate of lower class families. When a study done on lower class families in California found that most lower class families were racially diverse, focused on more African Americans and Hispanics. So this way, if they apply more lower class families to these colleges, they're increasing racial diversity without using it as a determining factor. Universities have also extended their outreach to more high schools to educate high school students on their options. Research done by the TFC.org suggests that most high-achieving low-income students don't actually know all of their application opportunities in colleges. They think that they're from a certain background, a certain area, that they don't have the same chances that other kids do. However, when colleges extend their outreach programs to these high school campuses, applications go up across the board for lower-income students, which increases racial diversity without actually using racial diversity as an application component. To close my initial argument, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Gail Heriot, a member of the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights. Gail stated in a debate on affirmative action that when the highest school in the academic ladder relaxes its academic standards in order to admit more minority students, the next school on the second rung of the ladder, lower, like not as high prestigious as the first school, must do the same. As you go down as the ranking of schools, each school has to relax their standards to allow more minority students in, which creates larger and larger academic gaps within these schools as you go down the ladder. Thank you.